You've talked on your podcast about the market data that you received from various industry experts, people who are selling and buying and seeing what things are worth. We are definitely in a world right now where market manipulation is something that we kind of have to be thinking about because it seems like it's a real issue. Do you think if you look back, was there ever a time that you suspected that people were reporting data to you to try to drive you to change things in the magazine? Or is that something that people hadn't really thought of at that point?
It wasn't just invented. That's been going on since the beginning of time. We did two things, though, to fight against that. One is that we were not, and again, when you're doing it, when it's digitized like this, again, on eBay, you can dig deeper and try to see if it was a truly consummated sale, a legit sale. But back in the pre-digital days, we were doing our own version of that, is that all sales were not equal in the sense of the quality of the data. We had somebody that, and if you've met some of the guys who are on our team that are still in the hobby, they're really sharp, that we'd have somebody on the West Coast, the Midwest, and the East Coast pretty much every weekend tracking what was really selling and seeing who was selling it actually, because there were some people that were reporting prices that were really not true, but we knew that because we were there. It wasn't like, I sold a bunch of these, and it was, we went by your table and it's still there. And or we talked to the person that bought it, and he said, "No, I didn't pay $1,500 for it. I paid $1,000 for it." And then further, the other thing we did that is also something people don't do very much now is that we tracked non-sales, at least in my regime. And that is that when people are saying, "Hey, it's selling all day long for $1,500 on eBay," but you go to the show and there's a whole bunch of them there for $1,000, and they're great. Let's say they're even graded. And you say, wait a minute, how can it be $1,500 selling like hotcakes? If it was, then all the $1,000 ones would be swallowed up. And so something isn't right. And so again, the hobby was much smaller then. And so we could do more follow-up. But over time, we knew which dealers we could trust. And if they betrayed the trust, then they'd lose some credibility points. It didn't mean we throw out everything they said, but it meant we took with a grain of salt. And there's some really honest, reputable dealers, people in this industry. And we were blessed to have many of them as some primary sources for us.
Just extremely well said, in my opinion, and just tremendous perspective. When you led with this is something that's been going on since the beginning of time, I just think it's so smart. It's so good.
A compliment to our industry that people care enough to try to make money illegally. The problem is it's so easy to make money legally. It's everything that they wanted things to go up too fast. A lot of that stuff eventually went up. But I'm not a get rich quick guy. I'm a get rich slow guy.
You've talked a lot on your podcast, which again, we should plug. It's Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. You've talked a lot about how you want the hobby to stay sustainable. And I got a million questions on that. But again, I know we're running out of time. I really think it's smart to step back every now and then and realize that not everything just doubles every year. And we're in a market right now where it feels like that's being talked about in a lot of other places. And so I don't want to belabor that. Going back to the market manipulation thing, I will tell you a little bit about my collecting. I love the chase of the really rare item. And I err on the side of rare and interesting, along with being iconic, than just the iconic. For example, I would rather have a one-off Ken Griffey card than a Ken Griffey, rookie card, upper deck card. The upper deck card, there's so many of them, it doesn't appeal to me. But the thing that takes me a while to find and has a chase associated with it, that's where my passion lies, and that's what my collection looks like. The thing about that is that in recent years, we've seen more and more of those types of rare, really interesting items come out. Really, since the mid-90s, it skewed that way. And especially this last 15 years, 1/1s and the cards that are most popular now are numbered to 10. And what I think that does, I have my own thoughts on it, but I wonder, do you think that the market that we're in today is more easily manipulated than it was back then? And how do you think about how we protect ourselves as buyers from that?
Yeah, it's more easily manipulated because you tell me if there's a manipulation if somebody buys a one-of-one card at a high price. Are you going to do an FBI investigation of the person or do a background check to see if there's a 6 degrees of separation of the seller? It's a sale. It's a legitimate sale. The card changed hands. And that's why the Beckett media guys don't normally really price the one-of-ones, because it's very speculative by the very nature. Now, when you have a whole bunch of one-of-ones, then you can do some comparisons. But to me, that's almost a different hobby. It's exciting. And there's a little bit of a gambling aspect. There's a little bit of a speculation aspect, even when it's LeBron James, even when it's Luca or Michael Jordan, even, because you're talking about when you get even 5 figures, much less 6 figures or 7 figures. So yeah, there's manipulation going on. So what is the antidote? The antidote is education. And it's not my only mission in my podcast or yours in your podcast, but there's a lot of podcasts out there that hopefully are helping listeners to figure out what is real value. And when you look at X dollars for a card, you've got to say, do I want that? And the answer isn't just yes or no. It's what are the other things I could get with that? That's why I really like what you're doing with your top 100. You're making a choice. If I really want this, then that's equal to these other 2 or 3. Now, I could sell those, raise the money and do that and have a zero sum game or a neutral cash neutrality in my hobby. But at some point, the prices get so high that you question that. And so if people are unquestioningly buying cards, that's bad. Unless they're billionaires. If they're billionaires, they can just do what they want to do. But the average person ought to think long and hard about spending big bucks on a card. And don't do it if you think the only reason is it's going to go up, because everything's going up, because it goes up until it doesn't. So
Jim, we could talk forever, and I'm totally tempted to. I got my brain's ready to go in about 100 different directions on everything that you just said. I will say on the cards need an end user. They need an end person who wants them. And I think sometimes people, especially right now where there's just this excitement, this exuberated, I want these cards, I need these cards. Sometimes people forget that things go down. Sometimes people forget that they have to actually want them in the end. And I think for me, that's what I'm proud about most with my top 100 is that I really just like my cards, and for me, that's something that I want to keep. And at some point I might have to move them for whatever reason, but I think there needs to be an end user.